Good afternoon, everyone. I am Candace Weed, as she said, the Technical Outreach Specialist for Smart Home America. And we have Mary Ure with us, who is also going to be co-presenting with me. We will go ahead and start, again, Smart Home America and IBHS, or the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety. Next slide, please. Smart Home America, we are a 501c3 based out of Mobile, Alabama. I'm going to speak to you a little bit more in detail as the presentation goes along and give you a better idea of exactly who we are and what we work to accomplish. Informed decisions make a smart home. A smart home does not end up in a landfill after severe weather events. It starts with resilience. A smart home is built or updated to withstand wind and wind-driven rain. It will survive rising water, is adequately insured, is energy efficient, and then and only then do we worry about the Internet of Things as a part of the home or business. Next slide. Sorry, I needed to click my next slide too. A community must have a set of building blocks in order to support resilience and sustainability. Hurricanes Ivan in 2004, followed 11 months later by Hurricanes Katrina in 2005, placed a spotlight on the rebuilding insanity that we had in place in Lower Alabama. When the insurance market up and left quietly one night in 2006, the state was forced to look for a solution. It took 10 years to put the building blocks in place, and one of the most important blocks was introducing the Fortified Suite of Construction Standards, which Mary is going to speak about here in just a moment. We have successfully flipped our high-risk markets in Lower Alabama, and now we are being asked to replicate our journey within other states. Next slide. Smart Home America exists to educate everyone that touches a built structure. This could be the contractors that build it, the insurance agents that cover it, or the policymakers that set the code. We work to give you the information needed to educate your clients, your homeowners, and other people in your community so that we can all take small steps towards more sustainable and resilient homes, businesses, and communities. While homeowners, business owners, and consumers are our ultimate target, we focus our outreach and education efforts on those that they trust the most. These are the groups of people that need to be in place to create resilient communities. You are the essential part of that community resilience. And Mary, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Wonderful. Thank you, Candace. My name is Mary. I am with the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety. And on the screen, you see our mission statement. We are a nonprofit fully funded by the property and casualty insurance companies, whose job is to figure out how we can reduce losses from severe weather events. We absolutely cannot do our job without our smart home partners. They do an amazing job of educating and getting the word out. So Candace and I will go back and forth. We work for different companies, but we are coworkers. I have talked to her, I think, 3 times today already. So don't be surprised if we do go back and forth and interrupt each other. And we will answer questions as we go if we can. Personal background on me. I am from Nebraska. I was born and raised in Nebraska. My parents still live in Plattsmouth. I studied at the University of Nebraska for structural engineering. From my traditional structural engineering role, I went to a role where I specialized in, well, as a structural engineer, I specialized in 2 things: wood construction and storm shelters. When my husband and I relocated, I wanted a job that got me out of the office a little bit more, and I started doing resilience education. And so I have been working very closely with IBHS for about a decade. I've officially been part of the team for 3 years. And I'm really excited to have joined such a cool organization. On the screen right now, you see our research center, which is located outside of Charlotte. At this research center, we study 4 perils. We study wind, hail, rain, and wildfire. The Fortified Standard is the standard that has been developed based on the research for 3 of those perils: wind, hail, and rain. The next thing we're going to do is do a flyover tour of the research center. I always think it goes a little too fast, so I'm going to start on this slide before we get there. Down here at the bottom, you see a roof aging farm. On this farm and several others throughout the country, we are able to test roofs and how they perform in real climate areas. So these are all installed per manufacturer recommendations, instrumented, carefully monitored, and we are able to pull sections of the roof off at 5, 10, 15 years or after events to study how the materials are really performing. So that is one big part. The other big part that always goes a little too fast for me is this building is our main test chamber. That building, we can recreate up to 130-mile-an-hour winds with 8 inches of rain an hour blowing on a home, as well as 2-inch hail. So if we go to the flyover of the research center, you'll see the roof farm here on the left. Those 105 fans are 6 feet tall each. Like I said, we can create a Category 3 storm inside of this building. It's a 6-story building. We also go out in the field and collect hail to recreate realistic hail so that we're studying how real hail acts. We are the only known facility to test wildfire with the built environment and understand how that affects things. Water is, of course, a huge loss driver for homes. So we study how water interacts with built structures, and we don't just do it in the lab. We go out into the field as well to make sure that what we're finding is realistic and that we're solving the right problems. So we study both residential and commercial buildings and have come up with 2 different designation programs that provide cost-effective solutions to be able to impact families and keep them safe during storms. So it's a neat organization, and really our mission is let's keep as many families as we can in homes following severe weather events. And I know you guys are no stranger to that because my family is right there too. I got a panicked phone call when the storms hit in April because one of my colleagues knew that my family was in Omaha and sent me a very panicky phone call making sure I knew that my family was safe and in a sheltered area. So the first thing we're going to do is talk some about what we have learned about how buildings, specifically homes, but it goes for all buildings. The pictures I'm going to show are mostly homes, fail. And this is from wind events, excuse me. This is from wind events primarily, as we're talking through this specific progression of failure. We have different ones for every type of event, but we're going to talk through the wind progression of failure. The first thing to go is not almost always, is always your roof cover, your soffits, and your fascia. So that is the first place we're going to see failure in any high wind event. The next place is going to be in your wall cover. So your wall cover is going to hold longer than your roof cover typically, but it will go. Following that, we start to see failures of the roof sheathing and roof structure. These 2 can happen in either order. So the picture on the left is a house that we actually had completed testing it in the chamber, and our research team, when we are done testing something in the chamber, our research team sometimes gets to play. And they said, I wonder what would happen if we disconnected all of these metal connectors you can see happening here. And I can promise if we had known we would get that great video of the whole roof flying out as neatly as it did, we would have done it a lot sooner. But we do see both of these failures in the field. I have seen homes following tornadoes where the roof is in one nice solid piece, but sitting 100 feet away from the house. And then once that happens, the final part or the final piece of failure is really total collapse. So that is where, if you take a direct hit from an EF5 tornado, you're going to have some areas of total collapse. We can't cost effectively mitigate that damage, but we can cost effectively mitigate a lot of the damage surrounding the area with the highest wind speeds. What is left out of this progression of damage is sudden pressurization, or we call them damage amplifiers. And these can be garage doors, they can be gable ends. Anytime that wind is able to get inside the building, it increases the pressure in a way that will cause a sudden failure. And this one, we put at the end of the progression of damage, but it can really happen anywhere in the process. If the first thing that happens is in the Bellevue tornadoes in 2016, I was at a house that was incredibly failed because their U-Haul moving trailer went through their garage door. And the wind speeds were not that high, but pushing that moving trailer through the garage door caused a sudden pressurization, which caused a dramatic total collapse failure. So this sequence of damage, you will see as we talk through the standard, that the standard is built to work with this sequence of damage. And first we want to prevent roof cover failure. Then we want to keep the roof sheathing and structure on. And at the silver level, we want to look at garage doors. And then finally, we want to prevent total collapse, of course, but we really want to impact the things that fail first so that we can impact the most families. So following on this slide, we say hurricane damage assessments because with IBHS, they are primarily hurricane damage assessments. Personally, I've done a lot of tornado damage assessments. The exact same concepts apply. Anytime a roof is newer, it tends to do better. And homes that are built to newer codes tend to do better. If you have any low slope roofs, so if you have a porch that has a low slope or flat roof, that area is vulnerable. It's important to pay attention. Garage doors act as those damage amplifiers, like I talked about. And then one of the things we're going to talk about a ton is sealed roof decks. So we're going to spend some time on talking about the sealed roof deck concept and how having a sealed roof deck helps with that first stage of the progression of failure. So in that first stage, when we start to lose roof cover, if we have a sealed roof deck, we're able to limit water intrusion and keep families in their home, which can have a huge impact on how things happen. So when we think about building codes, we look at this series of structures, and here we can see different lessons. These are from, I believe these are all Hurricane Harvey homes. And
Correct.
you can see here in 1978, the home is completely gone. This was a 1970 home that had been renovated. It has some damage, but it's in place. This 2017 home is in pretty good shape. So you can see that the newer codes, this is just an example of some of the ways that newer codes do better. But in addition to that, this 1970 home that was built to an old code but had a 2008 roof performed very well. So doing things if you are re-roofing to a higher standard or building to a higher standard is really key and important. Some examples of losses that we have seen that we easily could have prevented using the fortified standard. Gable ends are often not properly reinforced. That is something we see all too often. Here we see a roof sheathing failure. We'll talk about how just switching your nails and putting them a little bit closer together can have a big impact. One of the things we never recommend, but unfortunately see a lot, is 2 layers of roof cover. So if you are renovating, you always want to make sure that you are removing all of your existing roof cover down to the bare wood. Anytime you're putting a second layer on, you're putting yourself at risk. And then there are some things that in a tornado area are going to be hard to prevent every time. Here we have an impact to a window where that window is broken. In hurricane zones, fortified would require that that window has an impact rated shutter. My sister, if a tornado is coming at her house in Beaver Lake, she is going to throw her 4 children in the basement and not take time to put a shutter on a window. So that is one of the ways that fortified has geographically made itself relevant and appropriate. The standards are a little bit different based on what your risks are. So if we talk about building codes and why they're important, across the United States, there is a big variety of building codes. Some states have well-enforced statewide codes. Some states have a statewide code, but it's not enforced, and some states don't have any code at all. So Nebraska falls into that. There is a statewide code. In Omaha, in Elkhorn, in a lot of places, you're going to be very well enforced. At my sister's, the last house she was at, she's in a better area now, but at the last house she was at, she could have built anything and never seen a code official because she was very, very rural, and there just aren't code officials enforcing building codes. And so if we think back to that, newer homes do better and homes built to modern building codes do better. That is true, but everyone needs to have a second set of eyes, and that's really what code officials do. So that enforcement part is important, and it's extra important when we overlay all of the hurricanes, tornadoes, and wildfires that have hit the United States since 1950. There's no place that doesn't need a strong building code for new construction and a strong way to ensure that the homes are resilient to these risks that very obviously happen. So what we have done at IBHS is come up with the Fortified program. Fortified is a voluntary above code standard that can be used by builders or developers or homeowners. We have 3 different standards. We have Fortified Home, we have Fortified Commercial, and Fortified Multifamily. Technically, they're very similar. I am going to talk a lot about Fortified Home today. If you have a single family home, a townhome, or a duplex, you're going to fit into the Fortified Home standard. If you have an apartment building, or anytime you have stacked units, you're going to fit into Fortified Multifamily or Commercial, depending on the uses. Just know if you're doing that, there are going to be some nuanced differences. Know that I'm a resource for that. We're going to focus on home today. So what Fortified is and how it varies from traditional code is that in my training as a structural engineer, we are taught, and it has improved some, but we were very much taught that the goal of our job is to get a building to stand up through a natural disaster, get the people out alive, and then we don't care what happens to it, which of course is a very great goal. However, the Fortified program takes it a step further. Yes, obviously we want the people to get out alive. We also want to be able to protect that property and keep families in their homes, make the buildings usable in a quick, short time following an event. So when we think about how this looks with tornadoes, we're going to look at a video from the Moore tornadoes in 2013 that talks about how tornadoes work. So, and how we can affect tornadoes, because I know one of the big beliefs that a lot of people have is we can't do anything about tornadoes, we just have to accept the damages. And that is not true. So we're not going to prevent all of the damage. This was the direct hit area of the EF5. We can't cost effectively prevent that. What we can do is limit the damage in these areas down here and keep these families in homes. So keeping families in homes has such a big impact on the community as a whole beyond just the family. But what can we do to really make a difference to that? And if we talk more about tornadoes and about the belief systems that people have about tornadoes, we're going to really dig into this tornado just a little bit. If I can get my slides to advance. So this 2013 Moore tornado was an EF5. Its total path length was 17 miles. If we look at the wind speeds that were affected in this 17-mile path, there were 7 square miles where the wind speed was an EF0. At EF5, it is 0.0012 square miles that was affected by those wind speeds. Now, that probably doesn't mean a lot to you, but we can cost effectively eliminate damage from an EF2 to an EF0 to an EF2. We can minimize damage in EF3s. So there is a lot we can do. A lot of those families and homes we could keep very safe. If we look at the map, you can see where we had primarily shingle loss in the EF2 and EF3 ranges. So how can we keep those families in their homes? And that we can affect, these dots are all of the homes that had damage. If we can eliminate the shingle loss damage, we can take away that many dots. So that's a lot of dots that can go away. So during this tornado, 46% of the damage modes are addressed by some element of Fortified. So if we could eliminate half of the losses that occurred here, that's huge, right? So how are we going to do that? The first thing we're going to do is always talk about the roof. Fortified builds on itself. It talks about the roof. And that is because 90% of post-catastrophe claims include some sort of damage to the roof. And when we take that information plus what we know about wind speeds and we look at the fortified program, in fortified home in the high wind program, we have 3 different levels. The first level is fortified roof. At that level, we're going to try to keep the roof on and keep the water out. So we're looking at all those dots with shingle loss. By doing a little bit more work at the roof level, whether it's at the time of re-roof or new construction, we can have a big impact on how those homes perform. At the fortified silver level, we're still going to do everything in the roof level, and we're going to strengthen gable ends and overhangs if they're big overhangs. We're going to anchor attached structures like porches and carports. We're going to secure chimneys, and we're going to strengthen garage doors. So we're going to make a big impact on those damage amplifiers. And then at the fortified gold level, we're going to do everything in the fortified roof level. We're going to do everything in the fortified silver level. And we're going to design the home with a continuous load path to really pull everything together to make sure that that home is performing at its peak. So the way that the program is laid out right now is that fortified roof can be done at the time of re-roof or on new construction. Fortified silver can be retrofit or on new construction. Fortified gold technically can be retrofit. However, you would have to basically tear out all of your interior drywall. So fortified gold is really a new construction standard. And if you're already doing new construction, it is not that big of a lift to get there. On top of the wind program, you can also add a hail supplement. So that hail supplement affects the impact resistance of the roof cover and any skylights. We have our own hail scale that they need to meet good or excellent on. When I showed the video and I showed our team out collecting actual hailstones, we have patented a way to recreate hail because it is not as simple as making round ice cubes in your freezer. Shingles are traditionally tested with a little steel ball that's dropped on them, which doesn't give realistic failure. So our team has come up with a way to realistically test shingles with realistic hail and understand how those work. So if we're doing asphalt shingles, they need to be good or excellent on the IBHS scale. We do retest those regularly and update that scale regularly. The other thing I want to caveat early on is that I will talk a ton about asphalt shingles. Fortified is a product neutral. We don't care what product you use, how you build your structure. If you have a shingle roof or a metal roof or a tile roof or a concrete roof, we have standards for all of it. I talk about asphalt shingles a lot because 90% of the roofs in this country are asphalt shingles. So please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions about something else, but know that you're going to hear a lot about shingles because that's probably the majority of the roofs that you're doing. So we're going to dig in a little bit to the different levels of the program. At the fortified roof level, we talk about it as 3 steps. Nail it down, seal it up, and lock it in. So at the first step, what we're trying to do is keep the roof on. With that, we need to do a couple of things. The first thing is we really need to do one thing. We're attaching the roof deck, the plywood or OSB, to the trusses or rafters. We're doing that by using an 8-penny ring shank nail, which means that nail has a specific diameter. It's about 2 3/8 of an inch long minimum. But the important part here are these bumpy things that are on the nail. By adding those bumpy things and by putting the nails at 6 inches on center instead of the 12 inches on center that are often seen in the field, and sometimes in the field we see staples or smaller nails, we are more than doubling the capacity of holding this plywood to the rafters and trusses below. What we're trying to prevent with this are failures like this, where we see the roof sheathing coming up off of the trusses, or here a bigger picture of the roof sheathing coming all the way off of the truss. And this is something that we see very, very often. So that is a simple step. Instead of using a nail that is smooth and putting them at 6 inches around the perimeter of the panel and 12 inches in the middle, we're going to use a nail that's bumpy. We're going to put it at 6 inches throughout the whole panel. And just those two little steps more than double the capacity that keeps that sheathing on the roof structure. The second step is seal it up, the sealed roof deck. We are going to talk about this quite a bit. The goal of this step is to keep that water out. So we are making the assumption that your roof cover at some point is going to fail. What we really want to do is make sure that we have a way that if that roof cover, if your asphalt shingles or your metal roof cover fails, how do we then keep the water out? We have several different ways to do this. The first one is by installing a roof appropriate flashing tape over all of the seams of the plywood or OSB, and then installing an appropriate underlayment over the top of it. So the underlayments that are approved by IBHS are a slightly thicker. So traditionally what's used is a 15-pound roofing felt. IBHS requires a 30-pound roofing felt. Apologies. My husband just got home, so my dog is going to bark a lot. A 30-pound roofing felt, which is a little heavier, or a synthetic that meets standards. Again, we do not dictate what materials you use. We just say they need to meet specific standards. The other key part of the underlayment is that the underlayment needs to be installed with button cap nails, again, not staples, nails. They need to have 1-inch plastic caps on them at 12 inches on center in the middle of each sheet and at 6 inches at any lapse. And that is really key. The way that roofers traditionally install underlayment is they put in enough staples to keep it up until the roof cover is in place. By adding these additional button caps, we really strengthen the holding capacity and keep that underlayment in place if and when your roof cover fails. So a good example of how we are product neutral, how we don't care what product you use, is that this is an example of what our tape options look like. So you can use a modified bitumen that meets ASTM D1970. You can use a butyl tape or an acrylic tape. We don't care how you get there. We just need them to meet one of these specific standards to be used for this method of sealing the roof deck. For underlayment fasteners, we do need ring shank nails again. They need to penetrate all the way through the roof sheathing. And then these caps need to be a minimum of 1 inch. And I know I'm getting into details we don't need to get into, but it's a good example of, I don't care whose nails you use. I don't care what color the caps are. They just need to meet the standards that are laid out in the standard. They need to meet the requirements that are laid out in the standard. So that is our first and most common method for sealing the roof deck. The second method is to do ice and water shield over the full house or fully adhered membrane. This is simpler to install. It's a little bit more expensive. In colder climate zones, if you're re-roofing, it can be risky because we need to understand how condensation works on the underside of a roof deck. So you really need to work with your design team to make sure you're using the correct system. But the advantage of this is it's easy to install. It's a big roll of tape that you put over the top of the roof. It keeps that water out. It can be used on tongue and groove roof decks. So it gives you a little bit more flexibility. If you're doing new construction, it's not a bad choice in cold climate zones for re-roofs. It's a little bit more challenging. For all of these, we have standard details that can be found on our website. I'm not going to dig into them. Just know that more information than you could ever want on each of these methods is available to you. And then our third method is a 2-ply method. So what we're doing here is essentially using, we don't need to tape the seams. We can use 2 layers of that 30-pound felt or 2 layers of an approved synthetic. And doing that, all of these methods have been tested in our lab. Doing that really helps us get to that sealed roof deck where when your shingles or your metal roof cover fail, we can keep that water out. And then finally, we do have an option for sealing an existing roof deck if you have a roof that is in good condition. So if you have a newer roof, we have a method with spray foam adhesive that can be installed at all of the rafters and seams, that it counts as both the attachment and the sealed roof deck. This is for if someone has just re-roofed and wants to look for a way to seal their roof deck. So let's talk about why this sealing is so important. I'm going to show you an example here of the roof, a 1,300 square foot duplex built in our research center. This was in 2011. It is identical on either side. The furniture inside is not quite identical, but it is identical. The only difference is one half of this roof has tape on the seams. You can see it back up here. You'll see it again. As the wind is blowing at this building, we start blowing water at it too. About 60% of the 8 inches of rain hitting this house is getting in once that roof cover is lost. So that means 7 bathtubs full of water are getting inside this house once that roof cover is lost. By adding the tape, we can keep 95% of this water out. So that water is coming in on the unsealed side through all of the seams in the sheathing, through light fixtures. What it's doing is getting in there and really soaking that attic insulation, making it really, really heavy. It causes failures like this. If this happens, not only does the family have to leave, but we need to hope they have power quickly enough to dry it out so that they can come back before mold becomes a problem. This side of the house is, while not a total loss, it is going to displace families. This is the side with the sealed roof deck. The very observant of you will have noticed a little attic insulation down here. That's because attics are designed for wind to get up into them. So wind was up in that attic, it blew the insulation around. When our team went in and popped up the attic hatch to get in and do an investigation, a little bit of insulation fell out. There was some water. That water, because wind can get into the attic, will dry. You could walk in and sit down on the furniture in this home and stay perfectly dry. We had adjusters come in following this event. Keep in mind, these are 2011 dollars that were then adjusted to 2020, but pre-COVID dollars. So our damage estimate on the side with the tape on the seams was $6,000. On the side without the tape on the seam was $19,000. Those numbers are no longer accurate. What is still accurate is it was 3.5 times more expensive to get families back in this home without that $500 worth of tape on the seams. So why wouldn't we spend, and that was $500 then, the tape is more readily available now. So that is one cost that's actually gone down. Why wouldn't we spend that little bit of money up front to prevent that massive amount of loss after?
And Mary, I just want to interject, when she's talking about that damage, that's not including having to have somewhere else to live while this home is being repaired, the cost of transportation back and forth for kids to school, the personal belongings that are inside of this home. None of those are taken into account with that $19,000 number. Where the duplex on the left, their belongings would not have had to been replaced. They would not have to find somewhere else to stay. All of those things don't hold true for the side that had the sealed deck.
So this is what we're looking at with sealed roof decks. I'm missing a picture on this. This is, and it's not going to pop up for me. These are 2 homes that, if you could see the overall picture, this is following Hurricane Michael. These 2 homes from the top side look like they're in pretty good shape, but when you look at the the debris from the outside. I apologize. I don't know where the main picture for this one went. When you look at the debris from the outside, you can see that they've had to tear all of their belongings out, all the carpet out. So these families have been completely displaced, which, to Candace's point, that in and of itself ends up adding a lot of money. So when we look at the third step for the roof level of fortified, we say lock it in. What we're trying to do is, if you think back to that video where you saw the failure start, is always at the edges of the roof. So we want to take our drip edge, we want to install it over the underlayment to make the whole roof work together as a system. So what we want to do is, we have our properly installed underlayment. You can see our button cap nails. We want to take that drip edge. We require a slightly thicker drip edge than the building code does. We want to install it over the top of the underlayment and have nails that are installed at 12 inches on center, staggered throughout the drip edge. I'm going to give you guys a preview. In the next week, we're releasing a new standard. This is going to be 4 inches on center throughout the country starting next week. So you might as well just get used to putting them at 4, because we really see a significant difference in the performance there. So we have details like this that show you how to do all of this. And the drip edge, really, what it's doing is holding the sealed roof deck in place. It also serves as an anchor point for the roof cover system. A drip edge is technically required in the IRC, the International Residential Code, or the Nebraska State Building Code, or any building code technically requires a drip edge. It's not often enforced. It is usually installed under the underlayment, so it can't do the second purpose of serving as an anchor point for the roof cover system. And when we talk about an anchor point for the roof cover system, if we are doing asphalt shingles, what we're looking for is a fully adhered starter strip. So that starter strip is going to come in a roll. It's going to be a sticker across the whole back that meets an ASTM standard. By having that sticker meet that ASTM standard and attaching it to that drip edge, we're able to create a really good anchor point for the roof system. And really what we're looking at here is a load path for the roof cover. We're giving the roof cover its best chance of staying in place. So I talked about, with the starter strip, there being either the sticker one, which is what we see the most often. So that comes in rolls. It has an ASTM adhesive that is installed over the top. The other option, if that's not available, is to set a starter strip in a bed of mastic. We don't see this used very often because it can be messy, but it could be something that is used. It is a good option. We try to provide options as much as possible. So then when we talk about our roof cover system, because we don't just want to create a load path for the roof cover, we still want to have a roof cover that is going to perform. We are looking for asphalt shingles that meet one of 2 sets of requirements. This is most of the shingles on the market, so they're not hard to find. If you want to do impact rated shingles, they can be a little bit harder to find because you do need ones that meet good or excellent on our scale. But for your wind shingles, you need to meet one of these 2 ASTM classifications and then install them per the manufacturer's high wind recommendations. So that's typically going to mean a few more nails, getting them installed just a little bit better than what might happen. Like I said, we can do any other type of roof cover as well. The roof cover has to be installed to resist the design uplift pressure of the site, which you would get from your engineer or your roofing contractor. And we need a third-party testing report to show us what those limitations are. Those reports come from a variety of different resources. The International Code Council, the Florida Building Code has a product approval system. Miami-Dade has a notice of acceptance that gives you this information. Texas Department of Insurance, TDI, provides product evaluations. We are flexible about how we get that testing. It's just important that any other roof cover does have that testing. I got ahead of myself a little bit with the hail supplement because I didn't want to forget it. I do sometimes forget it, especially live in Baltimore today. We do not get hail that is worthy of a hail supplement. My parents in Plattsmouth put a fortified roof with the hail supplement on their home a year ago because it does make that much of a difference. So when we're talking about the hail supplement, it can be added to any designation. We need an impact rated roof covering system. We need any skylights that are on your home to be impact rated, and we need any solar panels that are on your home to be impact rated. So really all we're trying to do here is prevent damage from the impact of the hail. For shingles, it's pretty easy. We need to meet good or excellent on the IBHS shingle rating scale. So we can get there a lot of, well, here are several that are listed. They're always available on our website, and we have tested about 90% of the products that are available on the market. 90% of the material shipped out, like as a whole material quantity. So pretty much any shingle that has an impact rating, you're going to be able to find on our shingle rating test. My cat just decided to join us, and I think she must have joined me earlier too, because this slide is in the wrong order, but it talks about why properly rated drip edges are so important. So if you don't attach your drip edge correctly, here you can see one that has failed. It has 1, 2, 3, 4 nails in it, where the fortified program would require those nails to be placed much more often. It allows the wind to get up under there and really peel the roof system away. So it makes a big difference. Another requirement at the roof level, I left this in on purpose. It says hurricane only. This is another preview for you of a change that is coming in the updated standard. Any roof mounted vents, whether they're ridge vents or off ridge vents, are going to be required to meet a testing standard called TAS 100A. This testing standard helps with wind-driven rain intrusion. Most of the roof vents that you are buying today have this testing standard. It's just not as clearly shown on the packaging in your area as it is shown on the packaging in Candace's area in coastal Alabama. But while this says hurricane only, and that is technically true for the next year, starting a year from now, everywhere in the country, we will be requiring TAS 100A for any vents that are installed on a roof. So that is the roof level. So we talked about nail it down, seal it up, lock it in. Those are the 3 main steps. We can get any roof cover in, and then also making sure that your vents are rated for wind-driven rain intrusion. To go to fortified silver, we need to do all of that roof level stuff. And we need to focus on garage doors. I mentioned this earlier, but I'll mention it again. This says windows and doors. Candace lives in Mobile, Alabama. When a hurricane is coming, she has a lot of warning. For her to have a fortified silver home, she has to have a properly impact rated cover system for all of her windows and doors, meaning she needs to go put hurricane shutters on her house. We do not have that same requirement, because for my sister to go put shutters on her house when a tornado is coming is ridiculous. It's unreasonable. So that requirement is not there for you guys in high wind areas. The garage door requirement exists nationwide because it is so important. Porches and attached structures also nationwide. There we just need to strengthen those connections, because as wind is blowing on this structure, it can get up under this roof and cause bigger failures to the roof system. And then gable end bracing, that triangle piece of your house can cause sudden failures. It's a failure we see a lot. I have experienced a lot of those failures following tornado damage. That gable end failures also lead to pretty catastrophic losses in the end. So what we're trying to prevent at the silver level are really we call them damage amplifiers. The things that can make damage worse when they fail. And the big one for you guys, if you are in your personal home in a tornado region. If you are, I'm assuming most of you are in Nebraska. In Nebraska, if you are not already putting on a new roof and you want to spend a little bit of money on your home, get a new garage door. Get a properly rated garage door. And this is why. So keeping those garage doors in place is really key to preventing that damage, because when it starts to fail, it very, very often leads to roof and wall failures. In our assessments of damage that we have done throughout the country, 90% of homes whose garage door survives a storm have little to no structural damage. So that's a big impact. If you can spend a little bit of extra money getting a garage door that's properly rated for wind, it's a worthwhile thing to do. For bracing on gable ends on those triangle pieces, anytime that triangle is taller than 36 inches, we need to brace it. Why do we need to do that? We need to do it because we see failures like this all the time. The 2016 Bellevue tornadoes, I again saw a home that had a pretty significant gable failure. It didn't look that bad when we first looked at it, but as we dug in, what we learned was that that gable right along this seam had wiggled enough that wind got inside the whole building and picked it all up and shifted it all around. So it ended up being a total loss of a house. Yes, the people were safe. Most of their belongings ended up being safe, but they had to tear down what was essentially a brand new home because this intersection right here wasn't properly braced. So it is a really key thing to do at the silver level. Bracing is required in current modern building codes. In older building codes, it was not always required. In older building codes, we had a lot more interior walls that acted as that brace. We don't always have those now, or sometimes they get removed. So we don't count on those anymore. We want to have the bracing in place as though there are no interior walls. And then the third aspect of the silver level is attached structures. So we want to make sure here we have proper connections for any roof to beam connections, any beams to columns or walls, and columns to foundation. We have some tools that help people design these. An engineer can also help you design these. We just really want to make sure these are in place because all too often we see examples where they aren't actually in place. And what we're trying to prevent with these are failures like this one, where this carport at 80 miles an hour, once the carport goes, it takes that whole roof with it. So that's really what we're talking about with damage amplifiers, is how do we prevent losing that entire roof? Because now that it's gone, you can see the insulation blowing around. You can see if it was raining, all of that water would be getting in. There we are showing a manufactured home, but that is not it. They happen on any type of home. So that the test was at 80 miles an hour, which is an EF0 tornado. 80 miles an hour is not that high of a wind speed for the planes. They do happen, and preventing those failures can make a big impact. I forgot to hide this slide. I apologize. Like I said, in hurricane zones, do we have anyone here, and you can either chat or raise your hand or whatever, who is in a hurricane in a coastal area? I think the answer is no.
I am.
Well, sure, you are, Candace. You don't count. In this case, you don't count in the best possible way.
Absolutely.
So again, if you were in a hurricane zone, there would be a requirement for opening protection. Not true in a non-hurricane zone. So then if we're going to go to fortified gold, we have to do everything that's in the roof level, everything that's in the silver level, and everything that's in the gold level. At the gold level, what we're doing is pulling in a continuous load path. And that is really the concept of making sure your roof is fastened to your walls are fastened to each other, and your walls are fastened to the foundation, to make sure that home really stays in place as the wind blows. So you're gonna get, I promise I've been less technical than I normally am, and I know that I am overly technical, but let's talk a little bit about wind pressures. Um, we're gonna watch this video of wind pressures, and positive pressures are red. So when the wind is blowing this way, it's pushing here, but it's pulling on all these other aspects of the house. So as we push and pull on this house from all the different directions, the concept of a continuous load path is we need to have every piece of that chain be strong enough to hold itself all together, no matter what happens. So this wind coming in here pushes there, pulls up on the roof. So that's what your ring shank nails are preventing. That's why we care so much about the roof. But then we also need to be able to get all the way down into the foundation to prevent those failures. So we're going to dig a little bit into a roof failure. The first thing we want to do with those shingles is, if we properly nail them, they stay on. We can fasten that roof sheathing a little bit better to keep it in place and prevent it from failing. We need, the next step in the load path is tie that roof to the walls. That can be done in a variety of different ways. Then we need to tie the walls to the foundation. That can also be done in a variety of different ways. Those anchor bolts are so important, and unfortunately something we see missed way too often. Some of the worst failures I've seen are from just things that were human error, missed in the inspection process or the construction process. So the more we can prevent failures like this, the better off we'll be. So I'm going to skip the rest of this video because we go into some stuff we don't need to get into at this point. But with the load path, we're really talking about how do we make sure that every piece of that home is tied together to resist the loads that are going to act on it. It's part of why it's a new construction standard for the most part. If you were completely gutting a home, you could get it to gold, but beyond that, it would be challenging. So when we tie all of this together, what we get to is this side-by-side video. The difference in cost of these houses was $3,000. The one that is currently on the left was built to standard construction practices, and the one on the right is a fortified gold home. I already told you the difference in cost was $3,000. The fortified gold home stood through 4 different traditional construction homes being built next to it and being blown over. So that's why you see lots of different failure methods as we watch this. In the first one, we see that, we call that a soft story failure. Here you see a roof come off. Here you see it slide off first to the side. So lots of different failures here with the same house that met the fortified requirement standing next to it. So for $3,000, that's a pretty big impact, especially if you're already building a new house. Spend that $3,000. It's going to be a little bit more than $3,000 today because costs have gone up, but spend that money on the bones of your home instead of on a granite countertop. You can always replace your countertops in 5 years. So I have talked a little bit about eligibility, but as a reminder, for fortified home, eligible can be newer existing homes. Within the home program, we have single family detached, duplexes, townhomes, and then some manufactured homes. There are some special requirements around manufactured homes. Property types that aren't eligible in fortified home include mixed use commercial buildings, residential, multi-family buildings that are apartment complexes and condominiums. Those fall under a different fortified program. If you have those, let me know. We can figure it out. We do also have some eligibility requirements around foundations. The main one being you cannot have a dry stack foundation and get a fortified designation. By dry stack foundation, we mean you can pick the house up, kick the foundation over, and it just goes away. You guys aren't going to see a ton of this in your colder climate zones because everything would crack apart when the ground freezes, but it is something we do see. Eligible foundation types include a slab on grade, crawl spaces, stem walls, basements, any sort of an elevated floor. So most of your homes are going to be on an eligible foundation type. We do have some prerequisites around the roof construction. So we need to have nominal 2-inch thick roof structural member, which means a 2x4 or a 2x6 in that roof truss. They need to be no more than 24 inches on center. We need to have them be sheathed with panels, and they do need to be properly designed. Now, these are qualifying to use our very simple recipe. Anything else can be done, just may require the involvement of a professional engineer. And then a really key important step that we haven't talked about a lot is that every single fortified designation requires verification of key elements by what we call a fortified evaluator. Our evaluators have a checklist and tools that they use to do things like take site-specific pictures of the roof underlayment that's used to make sure it meets the requirements. To take site-specific pictures of the garage door as it's installed to make sure it meets the wind requirements. So when we talk about the different steps of a fortified project, the first step is obviously the homeowner, or you as the developer, or the construction crew. Somebody's going to initiate that project. Then steps 2, 3, and 4 all have to happen at the same time. So we need to be building or re-roofing to the requirements. We need to be documenting those requirements and verifying them, because we have a very detailed list of images that we need to gather in order to award a designation. That list includes things like the spacing of your nails that hold your roof sheathing to your roof structure. If you do not get those pictures before you put your underlayment on, the only way to get them is to tear off the roof and put it back on. So the documentation process is really, really important. Finally, the evaluator sends the information to IBHS. Our internal team reviews every single file and submits a designation. So included in the documentation they send to us are photographs of the materials and the construction practices, some of those test reports and manufacturers documentation that we talked about. We have compliance forms, so the roofing contractor will have to fill out a form that says, I understand I installed this to fortified, here are the steps I took, here's my roofing contractor license, I'm going to sign it and send it to the evaluator to send in. So after all of those components are verified, then IBHS reviews it and either issues a designation or asks for more information. If the submittal meets the requirements, we do issue the designation. We notify the fortified evaluator. The fortified evaluator then can notify whoever initiated the project, the homeowner, the builder, whoever it is, get them their certificate. And what that certificate does is give you a verification that for 5 years, that home meets the requirements of the fortified standard. That certificate is transferable between homeowners. After 5 years, what we need to look at are an evaluator will need to be rehired. We're looking for major changes to the home or major issues with the home. Basically, if we think about where this is all coming from, insurers have funded IBHS us to develop a program that gives them verifiable resilience of a structure. After 5 years, they want us to re-verify that that structure remains resilient. So we are looking for big changes or damage to the roof cover. Some of the things that can make homes ineligible are additions without involving an evaluator, re-roofing or repairing without involving an evaluator, solar panels without an evaluator. So all of those can cause issues. The next steps are more relevant in hurricane areas and coastal regions. But in those areas, if you replace doors or windows or add a doggy door, you can really make a difference in the way that that home is going to perform, because there we have the impact protection systems. So Adding a doggy door in a pressure rated garage door would make your home ineligible for a redesignation. Adding a doggy door in an exterior wall is an option that we have a technical bulletin of how to do that. So we have a network of professionals who can do the work. We have certified roofing contractors, professionals, and evaluators. Every single fortified home has to have a fortified evaluator involved. A year from today, every single fortified home will have to have a fortified roofing contractor involved. So we do need them to have some licenses. There are several different places to find our current professionals, and for people to learn more about it. Fortifiedproviders.com is the easy one. Smart Home America also has a great listing of providers. So currently, any licensed contractor can work with an evaluator to put on a fortified roof, to build a fortified silver home, or to build a fortified gold home. Again, preview for you guys, a year from now, the roofing contractors will need to be licensed. Evaluators have specific professional experience. They carry minimum insurance. They complete an online self-paced training, and they have to pass an exam. Once they have done all of that, they send their information to us and we review it and get them listed. These are typically licensed contractors. They can be code officials. They can be home inspectors. They can be energy raters. Somebody who's already working with you on your site is a great fit for your fortified evaluator. We do require that they carry $1 million general liability, $500,000 auto liability, and then workers' comp as required by law, because we want to make sure that these people are doing that. We have really legitimate, good quality businesses in place who are carrying the appropriate insurance. The way that you find them on our homepage, which is fortifiedhome.org, if you go to find a professional up here on the top, that is where you can find the current listing of professionals. I will tell you that in Nebraska, that listing number is small but growing. So we are always looking for recommendations of additional people to educate. Candace and I are happy to do education, and I will always take a trip home. If somebody needs in-person education or help, please let me know. My dad would be very happy. So all of our training is available at fortifiedwise.com. The roofing contractor training is $100. The test is $50. The evaluator training is a little bit more expensive because they do have to go into a lot more work. Also on this website, we have some fortified fundamentals courses that can give you some information. Those are completely free for anyone to watch. So if there are other members of your team that you want to learn a little bit more, it is self-paced, it is interactive. It is a little quicker than I can get through it, I will be honest. So they can give you some good information there. Some other tools that we really have are our standard. These are our two main, these are the documents we live and die by. Our fortified standard has every bit of every requirement listed in it. And then our documentation requirements are the checklist. These are both available at fortifiedhome.org or by emailing either Candace or I. I will make a note that we will include these two documents in our follow-up email as well, so Deanna can pass them on as well. I can't talk and write at the same time, I apologize, but I'll make sure I get those to you. With that, Candace, I think I pass it back to you.
I think there's one more slide that's on there.
Oh, okay.
Close.
Close. So, like I said, I talked a lot about home. We do also have commercial and multifamily. They are very similar. Oh, I just have a summary slide. So, summary, this was our transition slide. At the roof level, we're really looking to keep the water out and the roof deck on. Oh, these are commercial and multifamily. One of the differences for commercial and multifamily, which I know you guys are mostly single family. At the silver level for commercial and multifamily, we need electrical connections for backup power. And at the gold level, we need on-site backup power. So these are some of the big differences that exist. Those and that the backup power is just for commercial, not for multifamily, but that is the big technical difference that exists. And then the process is also a little bit different. So now back to Candace.
So I kind of want to tie back into a slide that Mary showed earlier when she was talking about building codes, and it had all those pretty colors that popped up on there, and those pretty colors indicating where hurricanes and tornadoes had touched down across the United States, as well as wildfire. Um, in 2023, there were 25 confirmed weather or climate disaster events, with each of those 25 exceeding $1 billion worth of damage each. And that was B with a billion. I mean, B on billion and not million. $1 billion each. Now, some of those were more than just $1 billion. They could have been 25, $30 billion that were cost in that space. Research shows us that for every $1 that is spent in mitigation or doing things like the fortified system prior to one of those events, you save $13 in the long run. $1 to $13 doesn't sound like a whole lot, but when you start talking about $1 billion to $13 billion worth of damage reduced, that's when the real impact starts to play into those numbers. Overall, those 25 events, you can see that there were tropical cyclones, droughts, floods, severe storms, wildfire, winter storms. All of those happened across the United States. If you went back about 3 months and you talked to the folks in Asheville, North Carolina, they would never have thought that they would have suffered an event like they saw when the hurricane came through. We like to think of it, and I use the word like very loosely, but it's more of a not so much if there's going to be a disaster that hits your neighborhood, it's a when that disaster is going to hit your neighborhood. Next slide, please. So the Alabama Department of Insurance is one of the first to use the fortified as the standards for resilient construction and re-roofing. More than 10 years ago, it is when these standards started to be used in the state of Alabama. It's truly become a national standard now. Fortified designations are now specifically listed as requirements for some of the grants that are, for all the grants that you see on the screen here, but for some other grants as well that are issued through states and federal agencies. It is a reimbursable expense on a HUD, $4.8 billion green and resilient retrofit program. Fortified has gained this level of acceptance because of its overall benefits to the homeowners and to the communities. Next slide, please. So the graph that you see on the screen right now, it provides a strong visual depiction that when the right nudges are identified and properly implemented, growth can be exponential. You can see how the numbers of fortified designations have dramatically increased, with the greatest rate of growth occurring since early 2020. Designations increased from 25,000 and are now nearly 70,000. You'll notice that a huge concentration of those are coming out of those coastal regions of Alabama and Louisiana more specifically. But we do have fortified homes in 27 different states across the United States at this point.
And I actually just got an update on that this morning, Candace. We are up to 31. So there have been some added that Candace and I didn't know about until about an hour before this session. So pretty significant number of states.
Oh, absolutely.
Including
That's
Nebraska.
So financially, why is all of this? Why is it important to you, to homeowners, to insurance companies, all of the people that touch those homes? If you remember in the beginning, I said something along the lines of we were able to flip the insurance market in Lower Alabama. It was the ability of homeowners to show that their homes were less likely to sustain damage at the same level as those homes that did not have some level of fortification, a fortified designation. The map that you see kind of gives a basic overview of where current fortified incentives are in place. The state of Alabama, if you are an admitted carrier through the insurance here, you have to publicize and give that what that discount is going to be. With Alabama, it is if you have a fortified roof designation, you're going to get anywhere from 25 to 35% discount off the wind portion. With a silver designation, so going just a little bit above and beyond there, is going to get you anywhere from 35 to 45. And if your home has that gold designation, then you're going to get up to a 55% discount. So you'll see on the slide that's there, though, that there are more states than just Alabama that have insurance discounts. Some states have tax credits and deductions that are given when that fortified roof is placed on a home. Mitigation credits. There are quite a few states that have grant programs now, with Oklahoma and Mississippi as the next two that should be online shortly to have those grant programs. So
Yeah, I was good. Sorry, you
that's
snuck
okay.
ahead, so I changed slides in advance, but if we go back one, and then I will go forward again. Sorry to throw you off your groove there, Candace. The
Absolutely, that's
states
okay.
have that have color on them in this map have well-known, well-publicized discounts. There are carriers who provide discounts nationwide. So some of the bigger insurers, if you work with your agent, you may have to help us educate your agent in the areas where fortified isn't as well known. But some of the bigger carriers do provide discounts nationwide.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mary, for clarifying that for me. So now there's also a growing number of public money supporting fortified and helping homeowners reach that fortified designation. But more importantly, those dollars being bring awareness to the programs and grow the infrastructure. Right now, there are grant programs in Alabama, North Carolina, Louisiana, more, I just spoke about Oklahoma, Mississippi, that are coming online in the very near future. The Federal Home Loan Bank of Dallas, which services Dallas, New Mexico, Louisiana, Arkansas, and Mississippi, also has a program for homeowners to help and assist with getting the fortified designation. And this is the momentum that has carried us to that 70,000, close to that 70,000 fortified homes designation that we now see in 31 states. Thank you, Mary, for that. If you'll go ahead and click to the next slide. I want to talk about, we've talked about the impact that it has on homes because of the wind. And a lot of the pictures that we have in the other slide decks that we use show a lot of visual depiction from hurricanes themselves. But again, I want to reiterate what Mary has already so eloquently done. Wind is wind. The time that you have and the notice that you have is going to be your biggest difference, but 130 miles an hour is 130 miles an hour. The biggest real world test for fortified, though, came back in 2020 when Hurricane Sally made landfall. It was a Category 2 storm, but what made Sally so incredibly dangerous was the slow movement that Category 2 storm brought, and it subjected homes to several hours of that hurricane force winds. Nearly 17,000 fortified homes along the Alabama coast were in danger during Hurricane Sally. Sally moved between 2 and 4 miles an hour, which meant that many of the buildings that were in the eye of that hurricane faced those winds for 7 to 8 hours. Even a low-level hurricane will do extensive damage if areas are subjected to 4 to 8 hours of that hurricane force winds. Many fortified homes that went through the eye of Sally, how did they do? How did they fare? So 95% of the homes that were fortified that withstood the storm had minimal damage to the homes. That means that 5% of the fortified homes didn't, there were only 5%, excuse me, I got my numbers mixed up here for a second. Only 5% of the homes that were fortified had to make any kind of insurance claim. And the more impressive number on that is going to be that less than 1% of those homes that did have to make a claim, those claims were related to a fortified system. So less than 1% of the homes that filed the claims had damage to a fortified system. So they were able to sustain their strength throughout the storm and the winds that hit them for those 4 to 8 hours. So what you see here in front of you is a multifamily unit that survived Hurricane Ida. These two, what kind of makes these pictures so impactful to me is these homes are about a mile apart from each other. They both were standing when Hurricane Ida hit, but you can see what they look like at the end of once the hurricane had passed through. The home on the apartment complex on the left obviously is not inhabitable. The people that live there could not stay in that structure. The complex on the right, you can see that it's still standing. There was very minimal damage that was done. You'll notice that there is an air conditioner unit in the forefront of that picture. And the reason why that air conditioner unit, they had not made it in the process of completing these homes to the point where the air conditioner unit would have been secured to the fortified standards. The homes that are on the left, some of those folks were able to move into the complex on the right. The other big takeaway from this is that it was only, the homes were only delayed by about 3 weeks from being able to be opened for people to be able to move into it. So there's your workforce. There are the folks that are, working in the grocery stores, the school teachers, police officers, firefighters, all of those folks that you need to have in your community to be able to open that community back up after a weather event. That is where they're living. That's where they're working. Next slide.
Another tidbit I learned this week that I haven't had a chance to share with Candace because we've been in meetings is that these two projects were built by the same developer. That
Yes.
developer is starting his next fortified gold project because he really sees the value in it.
Awesome. Awesome. So we've connected with 14 NGOs and have 12 of those actively utilizing or preparing to utilize fortified in their re-roofing and construction schedules. As you can see, Habitat for Humanity, Team Rubicon, SBP, Jericho, all of those organizations are using the fortified standards because they believe in the fortified standard. And they also see the benefit of putting the financial piece into those homes. I want to reiterate that, when we lost the insurance market down in Alabama, when I say that, there were lots of insurance companies that just left overnight. They weren't writing policies for homeowners. And we've all, even down here, seen an increase in those premiums that we're paying month to month and year to year on our homeowners insurance. But after the homes had used the fortified standards and get that fortified designations, the evaluator going out is the key piece in that to show to the insurance providers that these homes have been built to those standards and that they are going to make it and last a lot stronger through the storms. Next slide, please.
I am all.
Oh, you're already there. Just kidding.
Yes, I hit my mouse wheel on accident, so I just stuck with it.
Absolutely, that is fine, Mary. So another piece as a nonprofit that we are with Smart Home America, in 2017, after an extensive literature review, we were kind of shocked to learn that there were no tools to assist communities, especially small communities with little to no planning staff, on how to identify and plan for the location and development of workforce and affordable housing based on predictable natural hazards. As Mary talked about earlier, it's important to incorporate resilience and hazard awareness into a new housing construction and repairs to existing or damaged homes. The guide that we have, which is easily accessible through our smarthomeamerica.org website, it helps to walk you through how to identify the right strategies for your communities to decrease damage and the losses during the construction phase. So you have that mitigation happening prior to that disaster. And the last slide that we have is a survey that was included in the presentation the last time that this was given. I would ask that you pull out your phones if you have them handy or are not actually on those phones, and scan that to be able to take that survey. And then we will now, there are no questions in the chat piece of it, but we'll now open it up for anyone to ask any questions about anything specifically that we've talked about, or something that is involved that we haven't talked about.
And I'm going to leave this survey up for just a minute longer. This is a separate survey than you're going to get by email later this week. But we do also appreciate the feedback if you are willing to provide it.
And if anyone does have a question, you can just drop it in the chat box, or you can use that hand raise tool, or you can just come off of your mic if you have any questions.
Quiet bunch today.
Yes. Well, that means you guys covered everything. Well, we will be sending out the PowerPoint presentation, and we'll also be sending out a survey as well and a PDF copy. If you could please make sure you take our survey, and I'll also include you guys' survey as well. So you can take that. And we will also include contact information for both Mary and Candace. Why did I just draw a blank?
That's okay. My mother forgot my name most days, so it's okay.
But thank you all so much for joining us today, and please look out for that email. And yes, you'll get a recording. Bye, everyone.
Have a good day.
Thank you.